Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome. Today's video, we're going over a March 2025 real estate market update. Do you want to start off with talking about what happened in Canmore specifically?
Sounds good. Let's get after it here. So, Canmore, we had 43 sales in the month of March. Average sale price was 1,349,490. The average square foot price was $862, and the average days on the market was 50.
Dead Man's Flats, we saw two sales for an average sale price of 1.15 and an average square foot price of $780 a foot and an average days on the market of 109.
And we'll talk a little bit about
Yeah.
why that was up there near the end of the video. Let's talk about Harvey Heights. Two sales, just over $1 million. It was the average sale price. The average square foot price was 1,033, and the average days on the market was 8. So that is really quick. Lac des Arcs and Exshaw both had 0 sales in the month of March.
Banff, we saw two sales for an average sale price of $662,000. The average square foot price was $600 a foot, and then it took an average of 25 days to sell. Now we'll dive into Canmore specific, break down the specific property types, go into some depth on that. Single family homes, we saw 10 sales, average sale price $2.172 million. The average square foot price was $773 a foot, and the average days on the market was 77.
Townhomes, 14 sales, 1.269, $728 a square foot average price, and the average days on the market 41.
And make sure you stick around to the end of this video where we debrief everything that we're discussing here. Apartments, we saw 7 sales for an average sale price of $738,000. Average square foot price was $723 a foot, and it took an average of 63 days to sell.
One half duplex in the month of March sold $2.3 million, $788 a square foot, and 124 days on the market. Now, that is the residential market, and just a side note, $723 up to $788 a square foot. So we're right in the 750 plus almost.
Yeah.
Probably average $750 a square foot, which has changed.
Yeah.
It was kind of all over the map. So this seems to be leveling out around $750 a square foot.
Short-term rental sector, hotel condos, we saw 7 sales for an average sale price of $1,067,000. The average square foot price was $1,250 a foot, and it took an average of 32 days to sell.
Tourist homes, 4 sales in the month of March, $884,000 was the average sale price. $1,136 was the average square foot price, and the average days in the market was 19.
Sold listings year to date and active inventory. I'll let you kick it off.
Sure. So sold listings year to date in 2024, we had 112. In 2025, we had 100. So we're down 11%.
Keep in mind, this is January to end of March. End of month active inventory in 2024, we had 97. And in 2025, we had 134. So that's up 38%. Again, we're going to dive into this stuff.
Average sale price year to date was $1,034,000 in 2024. In 2025, it was 1.423. So again, up 38%, and we will talk about that.
I think let's get right into that. That's arguably what I think most people on this video are staying tuned to, especially with our previous episodes.
Mm-hmm.
That average sale price has been crazy this year. So let's break that down, because obviously as the months grow on, we're starting to get more sales when we're looking at year to date. So let's talk about that.
Well, I think there's a couple of different factors, and they don't seem to line up, as you and I discussed off camera. New listings have jumped almost by 50%, leading to the most inventory that we've seen in the last 5 years.
Yep.
Right?
For March.
This increases our month supply to 3.26.
Yep.
which should make it.
Yeah. Well, it's a 50% increase.
Yeah, it should make it a buyer's market, but let's talk a little bit about that 38%.
Yeah.
And why that number's a little bit skewed.
Yeah.
And maybe you can dive into that.
Well, as you guys know, we had Canmore's record home sale, according to our data, happen in, I think it was February, it could have been January. Property sold for over $8 million, sold basically in a couple days. So somebody was really looking forward to that place. So that alone increases our average sale price to date by 14%.
Yeah.
So if we take that property out, we're looking at about a 24% increase,
Which is
still high, because most of you guys who are watching these videos or in the Canmore market know that we typically talk about that 8 to 10% roughly as an average year over year.
right?
You know, couple exceptions here and there, but historically that is, you know, the rough average. But 24%, I mean, we're seeing that number drop down, you know, every single month, because we're not getting $8 million sales every month.
Yes.
So,
And we did have two that were in the $4 million range.
Yeah.
Which we haven't had those. Typically,
yeah.
you know, in the threes, we'll see some.
Mhm.
So that number, but when we backed even those out, it didn't change
A whole lot.
you know, it went from 24 to 20,
Mhm.
which is still a number that, you know, I think back to 2021 is kind of where that was.
Yeah, I was saying 22%, I believe.
You know, we are seeing more sales, especially in the residential market. We're seeing average square foot price go up. But I mean, even in the short-term market, you know, $1,250 a square foot, that's 7 sales. And I've noticed, just even seeing the sold data, you know, my client never bought the property, but you see it when it's sold and you're like, wow, multiple offers on these things. It's really, it's quite interesting.
And I think part of the reason why that average square foot price in the short-term rental market is now taking that jump, where we saw it kind of increase at a little bit of a slower rate, is all these pre-sales are now selling, and selling quickly. Like, they're not having trouble selling these properties. They're selling for anywhere from like $1,200 to like $1,500 a foot. So people in the resale market are going, okay, I understand it's not a brand new property, but like, this number is no longer under $1,000 compared to $1,300 a foot if you want to get something new. So that's what's drove that up, in my opinion. But let's talk about the shift to what some may perceive as buyers. We're going to a buyer's market. Obviously, our market's been very strong for sellers, and it kind of always has been for the most part. But we see the active inventory increase. We see the new listings increase. So let's talk about that, because in my opinion, my first indication is going, okay, it's starting to get a good time to buy because we got way more inventory. There's less competition now per se. So,
well, month supply is gone up.
Month supply's gone up 50%.
Which always tends to drop the price. I think coming out of COVID, we had such a dip in the residential market. We had our short-term rental market's been strong. You know, and maybe another video we can talk about that, but the residential market has really started to pick up. I noticed when I looked at this data, I was like, oh my goodness, like, look at how many sales, you know, 10 single family, 14 townhomes, 7 apartments, 1 half duplex. So, I mean, and the average square foot price jumping. But if you look at the days on the market, we're still hovering right around the 5-year average. So I think the 5-year average is 44 days, and we're at 49. You know, on that. So I think a lot of it is that the residential market took such a downswing. We did see 17 price reductions. So we have to take that into consideration. But things are still selling 99% of odds, right? Now, they could have been listed here, and because those, you know, the 99% comes on whatever the sale price is at the time, it doesn't necessarily take into consideration the price reductions. But even with the price reductions, we're still 24% up on the average sale price, so.
And I think from my perspective, we've talked about this for a long time where it's like, when are we going to build up the inventory level that we used to have? And we're starting to get to that point now. And I think that it's causing buyers to have more selection. I think there's been a lot of people that are, you know, looking to get into the market, but there's not a whole lot of options. Like, I mean, I got clients that are looking to buy their first property, and it's difficult because in that price range, there's not a whole lot of options. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have properties under $1 million.
No.
Because we do.
Yeah.
It's just, there's nothing on the market ever.
Yeah.
So now we're starting to get to that point. These people are pulling the trigger. Interest rates are shifting to become a little bit more positive for people who are buying. So I think it's a good time for buyers, but the market is staying strong because our inventory levels can support the demand.
Yeah.
And obviously the price growth is the price growth. So we can't argue that. Sold to ask ratio is 99%. And yes, that includes price reductions and whatnot, but so does, when we look at it and compare it to what's been happening over the last 5 years, 99% is right on par for that.
Yeah.
So is it a buyer's market? No. It's a buyer's market in the sense of, yeah, you have more options and interest rates are good.
Yeah. And I suspect that 24%, 38, because that's what the data is showing us. I suspect that number to level out.
I agree.
To come down. That doesn't mean that things are going to get cheaper necessarily. We could see a little bit of a. I just don't think we're gonna. I don't think we're gonna see a dip in that. We just might see that price level up. Keep in mind, we're talking about 3 months. Of data compared to 3 months of data last year. So
For sure.
you know, I was just dealing with a client this morning talking about looking at making an offer on a hotel condo that's going into multiples.
Yeah. I just go with that. That's sweet.
You know, so it's we don't see a ton of multiple offers in the residential market.
Yeah.
That's not saying we wouldn't if something came in that was priced right, because I do believe there are buyers.
Yeah.
Like you said, going, just haven't found what I like.
I want to talk about that for a second. It's super interesting to me on the residential market. Let's talk about single family specifically here. We had a deal we were doing together. It had been on the market for a long time. Priced properly, in my opinion.
Well, at the start, I think it was overpriced.
Yes. But we got to a point where it was worth what it was worth. At that point, the days on the market had gone up a bit. It goes conditional.
Yeah.
We're conditional for quite a while because we're working through some permitting stuff, and we'll touch on that. But at the same time, all of a sudden, it's like phone call. Can we show it? Can we see it? What's
Let me
going
know if
on?
that deal doesn't work out.
It's crazy. It's like people wait, and then there's an offer on something, and it's like, oh my goodness, what did we miss out on?
Yeah.
Let's get in there, let's see it. And a property could be on the market for 150 days. And so next thing you know, you're like, okay, or even in the short-term rental market, let's call it 30 days in that market at this time of year. It's been on the market, okay, we show it, somebody likes it, they want to write an offer, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I just got another offer this morning. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, where's this coming from? It's so weird how that happens, but it's like a continuing trend that always seems to be the case. And people are always like, you know, I don't want to lose this property. And so it's hard as a buyer's agent to be like, yeah, you got to go in and list, let's say. But at the same time, you have to have somebody that knows the market, knows what something's worth, to say, hey, this might have been on the market for a little bit, but like I'm telling you right now, this is a good price.
Yes.
And then
Just because it was overpriced doesn't mean at the price that it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for example, last week had a client wrote on a hotel condo. We looked at the numbers and we're like, hey, you know, it's got good views, probably list price. There's one that's pending in there right now. And then the next morning, multiple offers.
Yeah.
And so then my client's going, okay, well, what do we do? And it's like, well, what are you willing to pay for? Where if it sells for, let's say, $1,000 more, you're going to go, okay, that, I'm comfortable with losing that.
Yeah.
And multiple offers. And it was on the market for 10 days. So
Oh
it's
my
like, if someone really wanted that property, why isn't it being offered on day one? It's an interesting market for sure.
If we go back to the property
Yeah.
in Dead Mounds that we'll talk about here, kind of go through that process a little bit. But if we go back to that, so property overpriced. I had recommended a certain price and they chose to put a little bit more on, which is,
Yeah.
totally up to the seller.
Yeah.
It sat for a little bit. We finally dropped the price to a point where your client was interested.
Yeah.
Then we get all these other people. And so the importance of if you are in, what we call average market, 45 days, and you want to sell within that, it's important that you listen to what the market is telling you. Because once you get it to that place, so for instance, there was people after after the offer came in, were like, hey, I want to write and they had seen it previous.
I know.
But they were just watching it because it had been on the market so long that they thought, well, maybe there'll be another.
And there was a couple other homes in the neighborhood that were listed.
Yes.
And then next thing you know, one goes off the market, one goes conditional. It's like, whoa, now there's nothing there.
Yeah.
What do we?
Yeah.
Oh.
And so it was that timing thing where buyers were like, I think that's going to drop some more. And then it didn't. And then in the end, those other buyers ended up losing out on a property that they may have liked.
Yeah.
And, there were some permitting concerns or not concerns, issues in that property. And we could talk a little bit about that. It's super important that you have a realtor that understands the market. We learned a ton going through this. Sellers sometimes don't know. They buy a house that they think all the permits are done and the RPR is correct. And,
even the sellers could be under the impression that everything is correct as well.
Well, and bylaws change over time. That doesn't mean what you had before isn't what you should have.
Yeah.
But these permitting things are super important because as a buyer, when you buy something, you want to have something that if you want to turn around and sell, it's not going to cost you a bunch of money or go, this isn't allowed.
Yeah.
And as a seller, you don't want the liability of selling something that you haven't got permitted properly. So it did take some time.
A long time.
Months. And we worked with the MD to get some things permitted properly that the seller didn't know that wasn't permitted properly. And I think the MD learned some things. I think we learned some things.
Yeah.
So in Dead Mounds, I think, we understand what's going on out here, and we learned a ton of what to do and not to do. And even taking that into the rest of the Bull Valley market. I think it's really important that, you talk to your realtor. We're not saying you have to use us, but talk to your realtor and make sure you ask the questions that need to be asked so that you get the data that needs to be provided.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and at the end of the day, not only is it an education piece for the two of us dealing with properties like this, but it's also an education piece that we can pass along to our friends and our community and whatnot too. At the end of the day, we're all trying to do the same thing. As realtors, especially Kevin and I, we want to build lasting relationships, and we want to help buyers and sellers achieve what they're wanting to achieve. And if they don't know what that achievement number is, if they don't know what that is, that's why we're here. At the end of the day, we're here to help make these processes go smoothly, and we take pride in doing things the right way.
Yeah.
And so with that deal, being able to educate different people who live in the community or Canmore or wherever it is, our past experiences, and that's how we all become more valuable is through experience.
Yeah.
It's just something that we feel is important and that we learn and that we get to share with people. So at the end of the day, seller client, buyer client, both incredibly happy.
Yeah.
We got that deal over the finish line. And there's lots of deals that happen that have moving parts,
Mm-hmm.
not just like that one, but that one was exceptionally unique. And, you know, I remember you come to me saying, listen, there's other agents knocking on the door going, why is it conditional for 2 months? Like, what's going on? And so, yeah, it's important to know what you're getting into and know what you're selling. And that's why you hire a professional.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the same thing. And once you get a deal done, you need a lawyer.
Yeah.
Because there's certain things that obviously is outside of our scope of expertise. So, yeah.
Moving into April, we got 7 pending listings.
Yeah.
So that seems like a pretty good start. We'll see how the inventory levels change or increase or whatnot. We had realtor rounds this last week. There was like 10 plus properties on there,
that's
which is
crazy.
not normal.
No.
And most of those properties had a decent tag on them too. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see that average sale price continue to maybe not grow off of, let's use that 24% number, but, you know, maintain something more than 10 for the next little while. I do think that number is going to come down a bit, but
It'll take some time to come down.
it's a hot market. I mean, like it's hard to deny that for sure.
Yeah.
So I think that's everything for now.
Yeah.
We'll stay tuned to the statistics for April,
Mhm.
and we'll have another video for you and hopefully some more positive news. Thanks.